My name is Chip Ford. I'm with Jackie Caolo. It is October 20th, 2012, and we are at Jackie Caolo's home. Jackie, where are you from originally?
Actually, born in Texas, raised in Florida, and then traveled for 20 years with the Navy with my husband.
And when did you move to Sanford?
Actually, 1956.
Mm-hmm.
My husband was transferred here with the Naval Technical Training Command.
And what was Sanford like back then when you moved here in 1956?
Wonderful. It was just wonderful. It was really a Navy town, and most everybody here that you talked to was from the Navy. And a nice place to raise children, wonderful teachers in the schools. We picked Sanford. My husband was able to pick his own place of deployment. So we were here for a year, then we had to go to Texas for a year and he retired there, and then we settled down, came back to Sanford and stayed here the rest of the time.
So what were some of the factors that got you involved in teaching people how to swim?
Well, I had always been a swimmer when I was a young girl, and one of my friends won the swimming and diving championship in Berlin, Catherine Rawls. And I was always so proud of her, and I always wanted to kind of be like her. But also, I thought everybody knew how to swim, and when I found out they didn't know how to swim, I thought, well, I went out to the Navy base, actually, to get my children started in advanced swimming, and the teacher there needed assistance because her husband was in a squadron in Vietnam. So I offered to help her, and that's how I really started teaching, assisting her in 1956 and 57. So.
And what were some of your experiences with those early lessons? Do you remember, like, how they were set up, or?
Well, you mean my classes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I always felt it was important to teach water safety, because if you teach them how to swim but don't teach them the water safety, so that was always emphasized, was water safety, how to behave in and around the water. And and I felt like as long as they were happy doing that they would learn faster, which they did.
Mm-hmm.
And
were you nervous at first?
No, not really. I always just I knew that I could reach anybody at because I was young and agile, and I could get from one end of that pool to the other and nothing flat. And so I had classes on the hour, every hour, from 8 in the morning, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and hopefully just 10 to a class. But quite often people would say, well, we brought our neighbor, is that all right if they swim? And I couldn't help but say, okay, go ahead. And I just kept on with the classes until adults came at night, of course, at 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock. And it was hard getting them out of the pool. They had such a good time, they never wanted to leave too. So we just had a good time.
And you mentioned adults. Who were some of the people you were teaching to swim back then? Did you teach all ages, adults, kids?
Oh, all ages, yes. The older children, of course, came earlier. I say the adults I taught, actually, Emery Blake brought his children, Jeff Blake and his sisters and brother, and also I taught a little girl named Dana Morosini. In fact, her father's letter is in my folder. But Dana had her swimming lessons here, and I didn't realize that later she had married Christopher Reeves, and I saw him on television, and so I called her mother in New York, and I said, "Is that my little Dana?" And she said, "Absolutely, sure is, so be sure and watch it this weekend. They're going to have a big program about it." And so I saw her on television. Then unfortunately Chris died, and then her mother Helen, who was my good friend, she died from elective surgery, and then later on Dana also did, but she was one of my students here. That a lot of people have grown up to be pretty famous. They weren't famous when I knew them, but they were famous when I got through.
So what were your experiences teaching African American children how to swim back in the 1950s?
Well, they were just so anxious because they'd never had the opportunity to go swimming, and they didn't know the water was wet. They didn't know that if you jump in, you're going to go to the bottom. But it was fun teaching them to learn to understand the water and to learn how to enjoy it. And I learned that the black children learn just as fast, if not faster, because of they're so anxious. And I thoroughly enjoyed it and got to know a lot of people. And a lady they used to call Mother Wilson, everybody in Sanford knew her because she took care of people out at a nursing home. So she came to watch on the patio one day, and I was real pleased. She came to the edge of the pool and she put her finger up. She said, "I see they learn more than how to swim when they come here." And I was very flattered with that. She was right. The children learned early that I said what I meant and I meant what I said. And they listened to me and I listened to them. So we got along just fine.
Did you have any negative experiences?
Well, yeah, not really. One little girl came and she told me, she said, "You got a yucky pool, yucky, yucky, yucky." She didn't want to swim, but she did. But that was her, I couldn't help but laugh at her. But I think there might have been some people that felt at first that the children they didn't think they could understand and mind. Well, children understand and mind very well if you say what you mean and mean what you say. Yep. And I told you about the poem that I wrote. So they all would learn how to say that poem first, and then we'd go on the swimming sidewalk. You don't go near the swimming sidewalk when you have your clothes on. You wait until you're in your bathing suit.
You want to say that poem for us?
Oh, sure, I'd love to. Yeah, but I said, "Sit down first and look around, 'cause we're the smartest kids in town. Never, never swim alone. Practice 911 on phone. Big black clouds will spoil your fun, and pretty soon, here comes the sun. Lots of laughs help learning too. Underwater, I see you. Underwater, hear me sing. Swim and turn and do your thing. Safety first and safety last. Say the whistle, get out fast. Attention, friends, now have some fun. I love you, you're number one." Yay! Also, there are mirrors underwater. That's when it says underwater, I see you. That's when they'd go underwater and look at themselves in the swimming mirror.
So did you teach at one location, or did you go all over Sanford and Seminole County to teach people how to swim?
At first I went all over until we built the pool here. And yeah, I went wherever they went downtown to downtown pool. But now that does remind me, the downtown pool was like a two-story pool. And they asked me if I would teach there. And they gave me 9 mornings to teach them swimming. And I said, well, I'm so free, well, that's all the time we can give you. So the children would come, and there were just dozens of them in the class, and they would go upstairs, but the parents were made to stay downstairs. But upstairs, I had to ask, I went to the Seminole High School and asked volunteers to come and help me because the children couldn't touch bottom there, so it was difficult teaching them swimming when your feet won't go down. So I had a group. In fact, one of the mothers that helped me way back then she went in to teach swimming herself, and she's still teaching. But one day, after the swimming classes, they all left, and there was a whole group of children. And later on that day, two of the mothers took 5 of the children out to Crystal Lake in Lake Mary. And they sat on the side way up on the side of the hill and let the children go in the pool, not realizing the children would swim, then they'd stand up and take a breath because they could not pass, they hadn't done enough to pass their test. And one little boy would swim, then he'd stand up, then he'd swim and stand up, and swim and stand up, and then disappeared. And the parents did not have time to go out in the water and get him, and he drowned. That was that many years ago. I was so upset when I heard about that, and that's when I decided that the parents had to learn as much as the children. So the parents were always allowed to pay attention, but that was a terrible thing.
So what were some of the methods that you used to teach children? Did you get them all in the pool and then you jumped in there with them, or?
No. The children, when they do their safety walk around the pool, and the reason you do that, when you have a pool, there could be a snake in the water and you could get in trouble. One time there was a possum that had fallen through the screen and it was hanging on underneath the chair. So you did your safety walk first, and then you listen to directions: swim up, swim back, swimmers up, swimmers back. And they learned that you don't just go out and just jump in. And then they would sit down and do their kicking on the side of the pool, and then they would learn to turn over on their stomach and slip in the pool and monkey around to the step. Monkey around, you let your hands take you around the pool. And I had my pool built so that a young child, there's a little ledge on the bottom where their feet can touch. When they feel like they can touch, they feel more secure. So they would walk around and let their feet touch and swim over to the side of the pool, and then one at a time they would jump out to me, and when they jump out, gradually they let them get a little wetter and a little wetter, and then turn around and swim back to the step. That was their first, to jump out, turn around, and pick a bale of cotton, jump out, turn around, pick a bale of hay, jump out, turn around, pick a bale of cotton. That's the way the children learn to sing their little song and happily and do their swimming.
So you mentioned that the pool was here at the house and you gave lessons here. What did the neighbors think?
Well, at first they didn't mind so much, but when it got so there were just dozens of cars, but they never really complained. I felt like my neighbors were very, very tolerant, and they realized that what I was doing was to benefit everyone in town. And so nobody ever stopped me or ever complained, except when I brought the Head Start children. And at first the chief of police at that time didn't think I should do it, but he was a good friend. He never stopped me. I continued teaching, and right up until actually saw him years later. And when he saw me, I was at a private party, and when he saw me, he gave me a big hug and thanked me for all the work. So he wasn't against it. He was just not used to it, you know. And one young black man told me, he said the first day that they let him sit by the edge of the pool downtown and stick his water in that wonderful cool water, he said it just felt like something he had never ever experienced before. But they knocked the pool down. That was the end of that. And the only place you could take swimming and teach the black children was to come here. They knew that then, and they know it now. We'd go out there today if we could.
So you've been involved in teaching swimming for basically over 40 years.
50 years with
50 years.
American Red Cross Water Safety, the entire 50 years from start to finish.
So how did your curriculum or style of teaching change over the years from the beginning until when you retired?
Actually, I would say it's never changed. There's some techniques that I'm not very fond of that I hear that if they fall in the pool, they're supposed to roll over on their back. Well, I've had people bring their children here that had been through that technique, and they roll on their back and their face is getting all wet and they're gurgling and sputtering and crying. And I like to teach my children, if they fall in, you turn around and go back to the wall. I don't want you to turn over and lay on your back and stay out in the middle of the pool, because somebody's got to go get you. So my technique really never changed much.
So what were some of the factors that made you concentrate on water safety as the focus of swimming instruction?
Well, the American Pediatric Association would say you should never teach children how to swim before 5 years old, but what they really should say and do say now is you should start teaching your children water safety from the time they're babies. You start them in the bathtub and let them learn that the water's wet and how to splash their little hands. And the point I was going to make was about their water safety, opposed to, you teach water safety and teach them how to love the water and understand the water from the time they're, well, actually 6 months is a good time to start. You can start earlier in the bathtub, and then you play around until they're 6 months old, and then you can start letting them fall off the side and into the water. My grandson, at 4 months old, he was able to fall off the step and turn around by himself and get back to the step at 4 months old, because I had been teaching him since he was, well, the doctor said he could get wet at 3 days old, so into the pool, into the bathtub we went, actually, not the pool, into the bathtub. And you want to learn that water's wet. So many people prevent them. Then you start teaching the actual swimming strokes and swimming lessons possibly at 4 to 5 years old, and that's when swimming lessons such as the overarm crawl, American crawl, breaststroke, backstroke, when they're 5. But you certainly start teaching water safety long before then.
So when did you start teaching, children 5 and under how to swim? What made you decide that that's where you wanted to focus as well?
Well, actually, whenever anybody brought a baby here, I'd say, well, let me get them used to I'd show them how to let them go in the bathtub and get started, and then when they were old enough, they would bring them here. Age never made much difference to me. The only thing I did was teach the older children, at 8 in the morning before they went to school, perhaps, and I took the babies as they were born. And
how many babies do you estimate that you taught how to swim?
Thousands. thousands. It's almost unbelievable to. They were, when I say thousands, I mean thousands. Because sometimes I'd have 100 children a day here for all summer long. And
So, what were some of the factors that made you decide to do the Miss Jackie and Sally Seal water safety video?
oh, actually, that was kind of accidental. On my birthday, they were going to have a surprise birthday party for me at the Civic Center. And they'd made arrangements for the School of Dance Arts to bring their dancers and the singers to bring their singers. So my son sent a photographer, an underwater photographer, and a young lady that did the typing. So they made the tribute, which is at the back of the video. But that was the first thing we did. And with the leftover film from that, my son took it to a producer in Dallas and said, "What do you think we could do with this?" And he said, "Well, I think you got something there." So I put together the video, and that video later, it's been used all over Miami, Sanford, even in Holland. When I was over there traveling with my daughter. The video was submitted without my knowledge, actually, to a safety for children program, and it took first place, and I got a wonderful, it's equivalent to an Oscar. It's called a Telly, I think. And I've got it here somewhere. It's a beautiful bronze statuette that we took first place for safety on the video, for children's safety. Not necessarily water safety, but all safety for children. I was proud of that.
Do you feel like you've kind of expanded your teaching methods through the use of the video out to more and more kids?
Absolutely, yes. My son formed a children's water safety foundation, and whenever he has the opportunity, need be, he sends the video to help when there's been a problem somewhere in another state. He sends a letter in the video to have them help with that. Yes, I think it's expanded a lot.
So out of all those thousands of children that you've taught, do you still stay in regular contact
Absolutely.
with a lot of them?
Yes.
Like who?
Like who?
Mm-hmm.
Well, one little boy, the Brady Sapp, he was 1 year old when his mother brought him, and he swam the length of the pool before he was 2 years old, and the pool was a long pool. Well, Brady, every year I have a joint birthday party and have a lot of my friends, and Brady will be there. He's now over 30 years old, maybe 35, and he will be at the party with his children and his grandchildren. And his mother brought him every year until he was about 5 years old. When they started going to kindergarten, they would come here until 5, and then they go on off to kindergarten. And by then, they all were such good swimmers, they either needed to go for competition or just more swimming. And but Brady will be here, and his own children will be there too. Their mother's very good at teaching because she spends so much time here watching and helping me with the books. Because I never charged anything, only enough to pay for the electric bill and the chlorine, the expenses. I didn't even like charging then, but you have to charge to continue what you're doing.
So, if you could tell me only one experience in all of your time as a swimming instructor, what would be that story?
Oh my. Well, I'm afraid I...
How about several stories? Anything that that stick out in your mind that you really want to convey?
Mm, well, let me see. When it comes to the children, I guess the things that stick out in my mind is Brady is for one, that to know that it's possible to swim that well, which is a 38-foot pool, at 2 years old. Before he was 2, and then later on, before he was 3 years old, he swam underwater the length of the pool. He's just one little child that I remember. And I also told you about the little girl that came that was terrified to get her eyes wet, and she came after listening to watching the video for 2 weeks. Her parents and grandparents brought her, and before her hour was up, this 3-year-old had swum the entire length of the pool, just exactly like she learned on Miss Jackie's video.
Well, Miss Jackie, is there anything else you'd like to add to our interview before we wrap things up?
Well, anytime you can use the video to help other people, it would just make me feel real good. And I would do it all over again. I have a little bit of sun damage, but other than that, it's been very exciting.
I know you're very proud of your accomplishments and such around the area. Are you proud of all the children that you've taught to teach, both African American and white?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I learned to understand people a little better than I did before. And I always admired the people that went out of their way to put all their kids and their neighbors in the car and bring them over here. I gave them credit for wanting their children to learn to swim. And I think I told you that Jeff Blake, who came as a 2-year-old, when he grew up, he went to meetings with me to build a new swimming pool. And that's the result of that was Weller building their wonderful pool, which is being used constantly at Seminole High School for the young people. Of course, I think that all the children should know how to swim before they graduate from high school. And in some states that's the case, but not in Florida. But they do their best to teach as many as they possibly can. And now Jeff's son, he's now retired as a football player, and his son is one of the big players today. So
you were telling me a story about Jeff Blake's family earlier. That was really, really interesting. Would you like saying that? Would you like to tell that story again?
Well, yes. When Jeff Blake was a baby, his family would take them out to Wekiva Springs for there's a little place where you can stand and there's sand and you can play. But his aunt stepped off the ledge and was in the process of drowning when her sister, who was Jeff Blake's mother, jumped out there to save her and threw her back to safety. And everybody was so happy to see her and so intent on watching her, they failed to look around and realize that Jeff's mother was in trouble, and she did drown that day at Wekiva Springs, which was a terrible, sad day. And then, so the father brought Jeff as a baby here for swimming, and we've been friends ever since.
Mm-hmm. One final question, and then we'll go ahead and stop the interview. But what were some of the factors that made you decide that you were going to go ahead and teach African American children how to swim? Like, because what were some of the...
Well, there was never any decision to be made about it. But being Navy, Of course, I was accustomed to swimming with, they were always permitted on the Navy-based pools. But I realized that they didn't have the opportunity. That's the reason they couldn't swim. Their mothers would tell them, "Don't you dare go near that water. I'll spank you good." So they were always told to be frightened of the water. So when they came and found out how much fun it was and how fast they can learn absolutely, one child against the other. And in the video you'll see there's some black children in the video that dived off the diving board. But what was so amusing to me about that is those two were older children. They had never dived off the diving board, but because they were going to be on film, they wanted to get up there too. And they just stood on the end of that board and stuck their head down and fell into the water. Didn't bother them because they knew they were going to be saved. I have the reaching pole, which is every swimming pool should have a reaching pole that you can reach out and pull them in and teach them how to do that. So I have to laugh every time I see that video and see those children. I've forgotten their names, but I knew them well at the time. Of course, they're all grown up now.
All right, well, Miss Jackie, I'd like to thank you from myself and on behalf of the Public History Center for granting us this interview. Thank you so much for your time.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
I don't know. I'm so excited about you two getting married. I can't think about my video.